Welcome to Living the Reclaim Life podcast. I'm Denisha. We're glad you're here for conversations that revive hope, inspire healing, and encourage you to live a vibrant life with Christ. So grab a cup of coffee as we chat with today's guest. Welcome to today's episode. We are going to take a look at what the world looks like from 5 different generations. Last year, when we were all in quarantine, some friends and I got together and we recorded a Zoom call to talk about how things look. What is the perspective from different generations? And so on this episode, we have friends from ages 16 all the way to 75. We have someone from the silent generation, the boomers, Gen X, millennial, and Gen Z. And I hope that you enjoy seeing how each of us view the world and how we can share and honor each other. We had a ton of fun doing this, and we hope that you enjoy hearing the strength of each generation and what values we want to pass down to the next generation. The picture I have in my head is someone standing with one arm up and one arm down, reaching up to generations that are older than them for wisdom and reaching down to pass on their wisdom to other generations. Psalm 100 verse 5 says, "For the Lord is good, his steadfast love endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations." We hope you enjoy this conversation.
Nancy Prentice, what generation are you a part of?
I am from the silent generation, 1925 to 1945.
Fantastic. Okay. And then Nancy Nelson.
I am a baby boomer born in 1960, so at the tail end of the baby boom.
Awesome. Welcome. And then who's next?
I think that's me. I'm in Generation X, and that's from 1965 to 1979.
You want to say what year you were born?
Me? Would you like to?
You were born between 1965 and 1979. Do you want to give her your actual age? Okay, moving on. Miss Marie Henson, introduce yourself, say what generation you're from.
Yes, I am from the millennials, so from 1980 to 1994, born in 86, so 33. 86. We're the millennials.
The millennials. And then we have Kiana. Introduce yourself and what generation are you from?
My name is Kiana and I'm from Gen Z and I was born in 2003.
Awesome. I remember exactly what I was doing in 2003.
Really?
It's just about, yes, I do. We probably all do. So let's see, let's get started. So again, the point of this morning is going to be to see how each of us view the world and how we can share and honor each other and really be intentional about the way we're engaging with each other and the various generations. We're going to take this time together to see those blessings and how they play out and also what God has hidden for each of us in this generation that we're living in. So let's just get right to it. The first question, ladies, that we're going to cover is going to be, what would you say is the value of the generation that came before you? Anyone want to start that off, or do you want me to? You want to go, Nancy P?
Yes, I'd be happy to do that. I learned a lot about life from the people around me who had been through the Depression and World War II. They taught me a lot about survival. And I also learned that I needed to deal with anger, and I needed to not let the sun go down on my anger, that I needed to apologize because I might not get the chance to apologize later. And the other thing that I learned was that when I had my first son, that he was only on loan for 18 years and that I would need to do what I needed to do in those 18 years, because after that I needed to let him go so that he could learn to live in the adult world. And those were 2 very important things that I learned from the generation before me.
Great. How about Nancy Nelson?
Well, I feel like I have 2 generations before me. My own parents were the generation of Nancy Prentice, the silent generation. My husband's parents were the builders, the greatest generation, the World War II. So I feel like the silent generation was silent because they were just carrying on what the builders had done. And for me, I learned from the builders dedication, fulfilling your duty, faithfulness. You know, if you start something, you finish it. If you borrow something, you return it in better shape than it was in when you borrowed it. You know, just solid values.
Thank you for mentioning the builders as well, Nancy. Those are some really important people, and we have very few of them on our earth left today, and we definitely honor them and feel that they made such a profound contribution to our earth. So thanks for mentioning them. Denisha, what about Gen X?
You know, so the generation that came before me was the baby boomers. So that would be Nancy Nelson. And the one thing that I think about a few things. I think about the freedoms and the social structure that we have through that generation. And then I think about a lot of the like the revivals and things that happened where, you know, Billy Graham was preaching and all the people that came to Christ during that time. And I think that I think there's really a commitment to values at work that we really see kind of modeled for us in the boomers.
And then let's go to the millennials.
Well, actually, before I researched the characteristics and stuff listed, I was like, there isn't really a difference between my generation, like yours and Denisha's. And then I was like, actually, there is, and it's a good thing. I felt like that generation, they really bring the glue together for all of us. They help guide, me along. Everybody, our church, our pastor, same generation, I think. I think. And I feel like they just have really good patience for just bringing up generation below and ideas and new things. And I really value that because people like me, we have all these ideas, but then they help navigate us, and that's super important. So I guess that would be that they're just really good at being the glue for each generation,
Are you saying, Marie, that you find that Gen X is the glue between the boomers and the millennials? Ironically enough, the Gen Xers are quite a small generation. So it's quite a compliment that you're giving Gen X to suggest that they're the glue between two very large generations. I think that's an observation. Ms. Kiana, why don't you tell us a little bit about how the millennials are supporting your generation?
I kind of agree with what Marie was saying, that they are kind of a glue with Gen Z too. Because, personally, my family has a lot of friends that are, between that age, but they're also, a lot of my good friends. And, I don't know, they just create, really good bonds, and, they're really easy to talk to, and I feel like I can relate more with them a lot, I guess, for my age.
You can relate more with millennials, is what you're saying? Awesome. I love that, ladies. So each of you, I love how we did it, sort of each built on each other's generation. What are some of the perceptions of generations? I'm going to throw out my curveball, my own question. What do some of the other generations feel about the generations that were just mentioned? Does anyone have any thoughts on that? For example, Denisha, what do you think about the Kiana's generation? Or Nancy P., what do you think about the millennials? Or Nancy Nelson, why don't you say what your impression of the Gen X coming right behind the boomers? Did we mess it all up for you guys in any sort of way? Represent your generation well, because you guys raised us. You're our parents. So yeah, just throw that out and just see what the thoughts are out there.
Well, I have one thought on Gen X. My generation, is going to change the world. And we were the first feminists, that kind of thing. But when I got into a workplace that had baby boomer bosses, it didn't play out quite that way. But then when the Gen X came in, the Gen X were in charge, it didn't matter if you were a man, woman, or a Martian. If you could do the job, they'd put you in the position. I also feel like Gen X was really good at saying sometimes the time-honored methods of doing something aren't working. in the modern culture. And they would recognize that and were pretty skillful at communicating to those of us who didn't want to hear that, that the way we had always done it wasn't working anymore, to bring us along into some new ideas.
That's awesome. Well, you guys paved the way for us, so thank you.
There's that one that I was talking about.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about the Gen Zs. With the Gen Zs, I've really enjoyed getting to know people from the Gen Z generation because they're so technologically savvy. And it's really fun to work with them because they're so excited about everything they do. And for people that are older that were around when the technology started, it's so different now than it was then. Back then it was very slow and it went, step by step, and now it's just zooming. But the Gen Zs understand that and they can give us that information, and I appreciate it.
Nancy, you draw a really great point. So when you were Kiana's age, none of this technology was in existence, or at least if it was starting to even be studied or researched.
It wasn't. They weren't even talking about it. I was teaching computers in 1970. I was programming computers in 1970, but by that time I was already 30 years old.
Okay, so let's go back to Kiana's age. Kiana, how old are you right now? You're 16. Okay. Yeah. Tell us what life was like for you when you were 16. Like just your cultural experiences. Like, just give us into your life when you were Kiana's age.
Well, we rode our bikes and we went to the movies and, we had parties and whatever, but we didn't have telephones and we didn't have television. We just had the radio and we were outside a lot in all kinds of weather.
I feel like this COVID-19 quarantining would have been really difficult I don't know how, the parents would have kept their kids occupied without, all the Nintendo Switches and televisions and whatnot.
Well, that's what happened when the bubonic plague was around, because they had no way to communicate. Nobody understood anything. And that's why so many people died, because they didn't have the communication and the understanding.
Uh-huh. Wow, that's great insight. Okay, anyone else that wants to take a crack at giving an impression of enough information?
I also wanted to speak to Kiana. Felt like she's going to get ganged up on, but no. Kind of like the same with what Nancy was saying, because this is the generation of my kids, so it was kind of important. And I felt like when I was trying to summarize their value, and I thought they were born into a right here, right now, fast-paced, technological, totally different. So it's when I talk about stuff from when I was their age of technology, it feels like it was ancient history of how far they've come. So it's but what comes from that is I value with my kids. I noticed that it's they have this fierceness about everything. It's just kind of like my daughter. She's 11, so she's real debative and wants discussion about everything. And I'm this is good because it's a good mix of things. And I feel because they have all this technology and stuff, that's good for them. So you just have to mold that in the right direction. and stuff. But I think it's a really cool generation. I'm glad to be raising kids in it.
So. That's awesome.
Well, can I give props to Marie's generation for the millennials? I'll tell you, we have at work, we have a lot of millennials also that work at CASAS. And I think we see such an innovativeness about millennials and a creativity. And I think that the millennials will seek to solve problems in ways that we never would have thought, that I never would have thought to even look or verbalize in the way that you guys seek to solve the problems that are out there. So I think that that's super encouraging. And also that you're really the first generation to, as you come into adulthood, have had social media. And I think there's such a huge influence with that, and thus that awesome creativity and innovativeness, which is such a way to reach out. And so I think that is a huge blessing of the millennials.
Thank you.
completely agree. So Kiana, I'm curious, so the generation behind you are actually anywhere from 8 years old to being born now. What is sort of your impression of the generation that's coming behind you? I know it's kind of hard as they're still developing and growing, but do you have siblings?
Yes, my he's 18, so.
Okay, so as far as your impression, everyone's made a point to comment on the generation behind them. Do you have any thoughts on the generation that's being raised behind you?
Not really, but I kind of feel bad that like it's happening during like the coronavirus because like they're all so young, and like they like some like kids might not like get it and stuff, and it's just kind of like sucky to start your young life with, but.
You know, you're pointing out something that will definitely become a marker in their memories. They'll definitely remember this time period and what it was like, and whatever impression that they're left with will definitely be taken throughout their whole life, most likely. So that's a really good point you bring up. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about values. Each generation, I know that we talk about the builders before the silent generation. I know that we talk a lot about those golden values that they've instilled in our contemporary and modern world. Let's talk about some generational values of your own impression, your own upbringing, and sort of how you live out your life today. So who wants to take a crack at starting with this could be personal values or values shaped by your generation?
Well, I could talk about mine. I felt that I was, during my generation, I was taught how to dream instead of having to always deal with life crises, because things went pretty well after World War II was over. And it was a wonderful time because we had a freedom that children of today have no clue. And it was absolutely wonderful, but it taught me to value that freedom. And it also allowed me to dream for the future. And there were a lot of dreamers in my age group, and that made a lot of things possible later on because of that. So we were kind of a transition from the generation before me to the next one below me.
Well, in Nancy Prentice, you saw a lot of innovation occur between the generation that came before you and then several generations, all the generations that have come since.
Right. Yes.
Those milestones, like going to the moon and walking on the moon, just a lot of the things that happened you were an adult, and you were watching values shape right before you. So much of what we are benefiting from started from your generation.
Yes, it did. And it's been incredible to watch because it's just gotten bigger and better.
Awesome. Anyone else? Thoughts about the values that come from your generation?
I have one. This is kind of offbeat maybe, but I think the baby boomers are the first generation to embrace the concept of counseling. You know, going to talk to somebody about your problems. I think I watched my parents suffer in silence, and not have anybody to talk to about some of their personal problems and struggles. And baby boomers, the expression is let it all hang out. But I think it has led in many ways to a healthier society, people being more open about problems and things that have happened to them that can be destructive, and post-traumatic stress disorder, this kind of thing. But you can talk to somebody about it and get help now, and that used to be kind of taboo.
Sure. Yeah. That's a great thing to point out, and I think that I'm grateful to hear you say that was championed from your generation, because I know that so many of us, myself included, have benefited from being open and willing to go to counseling for various reasons or seasons in our life. So thank you for that. I love being from Gen X. I love my generation, and I love the values that I feel like we have contributed to this globe. You know, the catchphrase is work hard, play hard. I think that we embodied the work hard, play hard model of just being a real, I think we got the work hard component from the boomers. I saw my dad working really hard, but not playing as hard as I think that we learned to appreciate the balance between the value of working hard and seeing your efforts and your labor go far to achieve and to reach goals, but at the same time, really not take for granted, I should say, the blessings that can flow out of working hard, and to go on vacations and to spend time with family members and to watch your kids grow up. Not to say that my parents didn't do that, but I do think that one of the takeaways for me was that I, especially in my 20s and 30s, did work super, super hard, but also I traveled, I did things. And I think that was a value that was instilled in me, but then we took it farther. I think that the Gen X took that and took it to the next level, maybe, if you will. I know that millennials, Marie, I'm going to bring you up next. I know millennials talk a lot about really embracing that value of doing life and having experiences, and really having even more of a balance, maybe. I mean, like, we were hardcore, work hard, play hard. And I think, though, that millennials have taken that and they've taken it to another level as well. Do you have any thoughts on that? Do you do that personally? I mean, how do you view that sort of, I know it's maybe a stereotype, but do you really feel like that's something that your generation values, and do you?
Well, personally, I felt like, I don't know if I could speak for like my whole generation, but I felt like I kind of had to grow up like being independent with like everything, like finding things out for myself and just like taking the initiative to do that. And so I don't know if it will answer your question exactly, but I felt like my generation was like the good blend of like the fiery, passion driven type thing, but with like being able to be molded and like guided and shaped. So I think that we can bring good vision and stuff like that. Like, I feel like I try to, but then we're like easily taught and easily guided. And I don't know if I could speak for the whole generation of millennials, because yes, they have stereotypes, but I feel like there can be such a good thing when they can be navigated in the right way with the help of Gen Xers and maybe even below with technology from the one below. Can't remember it right now, but yeah. So that's probably a whole bunch of answers in one, but yeah. I think our value is that we can be navigated and taught well. I don't know. And we're independent, so.
And even stereotypes aren't necessarily a negative thing. It's just kind of like what you're in a herd mentality, like like your generation as a herd sort of does. And I don't think that's necessarily negative too. And you kind of touched on something that's really important. Marie, would you say that you said, I can't speak for my generation, I can only speak for myself. I do know people who sort of don't feel like they came from the generation that they were born into. And I think that needs to be pointed out, because I can only think that maybe some of the women that are watching this are feeling the same way. Like, they're like, well, technically I'm a Gen Xer, but man, I should have been born in the Builders era. Or maybe millennials feel like Gen X, or
right.
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yes, definitely. I find value in like all generations, but I felt like that kind of started like as I was an adult, like a little in like later years, with the fact that I just loved like the simpler times of like, the 40s and 50s and the relational type things of like writing letters that I value, that I wish my generation still would value too. And then even beyond that, I just love history. So I feel like it's so important to what each generation went through. And I mean, I feel like maybe I'm in the wrong generation, but I feel like I could bring all that to my generation and share it with like, this is all so important of all things, like these stories and times before of what's to come too. Like it should all like blend together. And it's really important to know, which I'll state later in my value of all of this, or my passion for it, of just that, if you feel like it's like you feel like maybe you didn't belong in the millennial generation, like find ones that you do love and read about them and keep that history like alive, for your generation, and you could bring a lot more to it. So yeah, that would be my take on that.
I think that's it. Jana, what are some of the values from Gen Z?
My personal values, I think, is just like always making the most out of everything, because like being in a high school or like, high school time, then you can be like kind of dreading like school and stuff. And like I have a job, so it just seems like busy, but like I always keep myself happy because like I know how like good of a life I have, I guess. And then I also am very, very close with my family. So those are two things I think are like really important to me. I don't know about the rest of the people my age, but that's just things that I kind of live by.
Beautiful. Anyone else want to speak to that? Anything that we haven't touched on, or that you don't feel like has been really put out there in a way that you have thoughts to? No? We're touching all the bases. In your opinion, and I know, Murray, you were kind of touching on this a little bit. You were giving some tangible markers and maybe what we can do, like reading history or reaching down into the generation below us. But I really want to start to unpack. It was a great segue, too, by the way. I want to unpack ways that we can build bridges in connecting the generations that have come before us and will come after us. Or any thoughts to how we can build bridges and what that might look like?
Well, I'll share first. I'm going to read it because I wrote it down. It's very close to my heart. So far, like the Your Story Matters with our church has been like life-changing for me. And I felt like this is so important. Like this is it, like this is what keeps it all together, and it's stories. And I felt like the stories just give us like insights to different times that are super important. And giving people just a platform to share, like openly, like this, or in anything, a chance to share their stories is amazing to me. And sorry, I lost my other answer to this. It was in the beginning. So I feel like an example of this for me was like my great uncle. He's 93. He lives in California. We both share this passion for like genealogy and just history in general. And I feel like because we had such like a broad spectrum between us, like every time I'm with him, I'm constantly like, just all these questions about my family, people I never knew. And it's like, I want to remember all of it to carry it on to my kids, because I feel like they're just little pieces that are important that make us from in the past. And same with the stories from the Bible. Like they are stories that help give us insight to help us deal with things, and they just help shape us. So I feel like just having the platform for people to be able to share, whatever setting that might be, if there's an opportunity to do it, then do it and let people from before me even share that might not feel like they've been able to. So I encourage my kids to do that from the generation below me. So I think it's super important, and I love history, so I like to hear stories. So.
I love what you just said with that. I think it's so important as parents to like teach our kids different stories, to tell our kids stories about their grandparents or great grandparents, people that they never even may meet, but just to keep those stories alive and keep that connection to be connected to people, even if you haven't met them, but to know about them. I think that's a good key. That's awesome.
It's really important to me because I wasn't real close with like my immediate grandparents, and then they died. And I guess I kind of felt like it was maybe a little bit of a missing piece. So, I plugged in with my great uncle just to like know like these people I didn't know. Like, am I like them? Or it's not like life changing altogether, but it's just nice to know. And I value that. And I hope I'm gonna have to start writing it down, all the stories I know from him, because I feel like I'm gonna forget over time, and then it won't be as important. But yes, I feel that it's so important.
I think Marie made an interesting point about characters in the Bible. I just realized of them we follow through their whole life. You know, David was a boy when we first met him, and we followed him all the way through his, you know, becoming king and beyond. And, I don't know, Moses was a young man and then became an old man, and God was still with him. So there's probably some interesting lessons in there. I've never thought about Bible study from that perspective.
We're building bridges right now. I love this.
Well, I enjoyed the, whenever we start a service, we have the welcome home, and it shows the campus and whatever, because I think that we're showing people that we love them, and we love Jesus, and that Jesus is our place of belonging and our reason to celebrate life and our hope now and forever. And we keep trying to make people aware of that and how important love is.
Uh-huh. Hannah, any thought? What are ways that we can offer bridges to your generation to support you?
I feel like my generation is very talkative and very like interactive. I don't know if it's like my whole generation. I know I will. So like I get like I'm good at kind of putting myself out there to get to know people, especially like ones that aren't my age, because I don't know. It's interesting to see like their insight about how they live and stuff, because it's like so different. And especially my grandma, I like get along with my grandma so well, and like because she's a baker, and then so she taught me how to bake, and that's kind of been like a thing between us. And so I don't know.
She makes a mean tiramisu.
Yum.
It was all me.
A question, maybe we've already touched on it a little bit, but let's drill down a little bit more on, so we have all of these generations represented here. What would you like the other generations here to know about you? How can we, like, again, to extend from the build a bridge concept, what if, we have this captive audience and we have each other's ears here in this moment, what would we like to tell the other? Because I know I hear a lot of my generation talking about another generation, but the idea would be like, we'll go tell that generation. And here we have this forum where we're able to do that. So what would you like them to know, or what would you like to ask? Any of the ladies have questions for other ladies right here? I know, right? You didn't know I was going to say that.
My brain's like, I have so many questions. I love that. Can I answer both of those? Is that okay? So one, I would say something I want people to know about my generation is I feel like we're really busy. I'm in the era of life with kids, and I feel like I don't always have the time, make the time to really reach out to other people in my family. And I for me personally, there's so many times I just want to like grab them and hug them and say, I love you. I'm not trying to not reach out or trying to be distant. We're just really busy in this phase of life. So that's something I'd love for other generations to know, is that, man, they're loved, even if I don't always have time to pick up a phone. And then something that, what was your second question? I just lost it because I'm like, I really want everybody to know that. What was your second question, Cal?
On the bridge building component of the earlier question?
Oh, yes. I would love to ask Nancy Prentice, what are a couple of values that you would love to see maintained through all 5 of our generations?
That's a great question.
One of them is people being non-judgmental and being open to getting to know people regardless of their race or their religion, because it makes such a difference that you can learn so many things from so many different people. I can't think of anything else.
Feel free to jump in and add to what we're talking about. Nancy Nelson, do you have a question for?
Did I look like I had a question? I'm sorry. No, I don't have a question. I was going to kind of answer the question that Denisha asked. I think it's important for every generation to be teachable. Mm-hmm. If you're teachable, you can learn something from the generations that have come before you, and you can learn something from the generations that are coming behind you. And it's easy, especially as you get older, to think, oh, the young ones don't have anything to teach me. You know, I'm experienced in life now, and I know things, and I know how the world works. But if you stay teachable, you get surprised.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've experienced that exactly. Like being in my generation, like I've had these visions, and it's like, thankfully people above me who are wise, like, help guide me in those. And it's like, I don't know everything. Sometimes I think I might think I do, but I don't, or there's always a better way to do it, or easier way, or something. So it's so important to have all that together in even like in God's kingdom, you know, of reaching across to all those. So I love that. Yes.
So reaching across all of the generations that we all hear in this forum this morning, as well as we go about our days, as we are, even though while currently we're dating ourselves by all of the COVID-19 talk that we've had, but social distancing ourselves when we walk into a grocery store, or when we get to walk into our church again, you know, and when our kids get to go back to their schools, and we get to go back to resume life as normal, and we go back with a lot of gratitude and relief that the season is over. We are going to be coming back together with all of these generations. We're all going to, like right now, the whole globe, if you think about it, it's a global pandemic that we're experiencing right now. Globally, we're all isolated in some ways from each other. Every generation included is isolated from each other. And so when this is over, when this is all over, we're all going to come flooding back into each other's space. And all good fun, and as well as being serious. Thank you so much for your time and your thoughts and your energy toward answering these questions thoughtfully.
This conversation was so special to me. Another friend of mine, Carol, said that we see in many places in the Bible where the generations are so connected in their thought patterns that they saw the big picture of what God was doing through the generations, and they found God faithful. There is such a richness that comes as we ask God's blessing on the next generation and value the generations that come before us. You know, our hope for today on this panel is that you would be inspired to celebrate each generation that crosses your path, and that you would see opportunities to learn from one another, to honor one another, and be intentional about engaging together. And that through this time, we will see the blessings that God has hidden in each generation for us to find. Thanks for joining us today. Thanks for listening. I pray you found hope in today's conversation, and maybe even feel a little less alone in your story. Stay connected with us on Facebook and Instagram at Reclaimed Story. Want to learn more about living a reclaimed life and how you can be a part of our growing community of reclaimers? Check out our website at reclaimedstory.com. All of those links and more will be in the show notes. And if you enjoyed this inspirational podcast, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. That is a huge help in helping us reach more people to live the reclaimed life. Thank you so much for listening.